Buenos días a todos. Good morning to everyone. Welcome to the Ecoener results presentation for the first half of 2022 conference call. This is Luciano Iroa speaking. Today, we have with us Luis de Valdivia, President and Founder of the company, for the presentation, accompanied by Miguel Camino, Corporate General Manager. After the presentation, they will remain at your disposal for any question you might have to the following Q&A. Note that this meeting is going to be held in Spanish, with usual translation into English available on the Zoom platform. Now, please listen to the translation instructions, and just after, Luis takes the floor.
Before we start, we wanted to provide simple instructions on the use of the platform in this meeting. To hear the presentation in English, click on the interpretation button on the bottom menu and select English. If you do not want to hear the original at a lower volume at the same time as the interpretation, click the mute original audio option. Your microphones are currently silenced. To ask questions during the Q&A, simply activate your microphone. Thank you very much.
Buenos días a todos.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for attending this presentation. And I'm sorry about the short delay in starting it. And I'm going to be sharing Ecoener's results with you for the first half of 2022 of this year. The first half of 2022 has left us the following figures. Ecoener's net profit has risen fourfold. Consolidated net profit reached 12 million euros. That's an increase of 350% against the 2.7 million euros that we earned in the first half of 2021. The group's EBITDA, which, as you know, is the key performance indicator for tracking management quality, rose to 25.1 million euros, growing 116% in comparison to the same period of last year, when it was 11.6 million euros. Thus, our company ended the first half of this year with a turnover of 38.4 million euros. That is 88% more than the 18.2 million euros from the same period last year. In generation, Ecoener's revenues from wind power have doubled, and its solar power revenues have gone up 3.4 times. Installed capacity rose 21% over these first 6 months of 2022, going up from 141 megawatts to 171 megawatts. So the half year ended with a global output of 170.7 gigawatt hours. Output was hit by the intense drought we're suffering. We're all hearing a lot about it, but it also has a direct impact on our hydro assets in Spain. Despite this serious drought, total generation has only fallen 10%, as we supplement hydro with wind and PV output. Witnessing the complementary nature of our assets ratifies our decision that the correct strategy for Ecoener was one of geographical and technology diversification. Operating cash flow reached 24.6 million euros over the half year. That is 110% more than in the same period of 2021, when it was 11.7 million. We have invested 34 million euros in our assets over the first 6 months of the year. That's a 75% increase over the 14 million euros invested in the first half of 2021. Moreover, this figure is going up substantially over the second half of this year, because of all the assets we currently have under construction. Ecoener continues to reduce our net debt to EBITDA ratio. And that means that right now, Ecoener maintains a healthy debt position with a comfortable maturity schedule structured at contained prices. These results have been achieved during an enormously difficult year with a complex environment worldwide, which I think we know only too much about. So by way of summary, the first half-year figures are the product of two clear aspirations: growth and consolidation. Growth in our turnover, growth in our EBITDA, but above all, future growth, as our net profit shows a multiple of 4, and consolidation, showcasing the strengths of our business model and our entrepreneurial strategy, as we invest in a diversified and increasingly internationalized portfolio of assets. At present, Ecoener has an installed capacity of 171 megawatts. Under construction, we have 186 megawatts, including assets in Galicia and the Canary Islands and Spain, the Dominican Republic and Colombia. These projects will be giving a significant boost to our EBITDA in 2023. And there's more. We'll shortly be starting 2 new projects. In the Dominican Republic, with works on Paita 1, 60 megawatt peak, and the new Tibito project for Colombia, which is going to be 5.4 megawatt peaks added to Ecoener's pipeline. So let's have a look at the status of our key construction operations. In the Canary Islands, we've got La Florida wind farm. We've already completed the civil engineering works and bought the equipment, which is being installed to finalize commissioning and bring the plant online in the last quarter of the year. In La Gomera, we're finalizing equipment procurement, with equipment already being assembled on site. We're concluding the civil engineering to get the plant commissioned and online by the end of the year. In the Dominican Republic, Ecoener is forging ahead with our most ambitious project so far, Cumayasa 1 and 2, where we finished the civil engineering with construction of the substation, as you can see in the picture. The equipment is already on site and ready to start installation. In Colombia, we continue to progress in the construction of the Sunorte photovoltaic plant with an output capacity of that you can see here, and we've purchased the equipment and the material which is on site, with the civil engineering rolling out on schedule. In Galicia, we're expanding capacity at the hydroelectricity plant in Sierres to increase it by 3.1 megawatts with another void turbine, which will be added on to the 5.
La obra civil avanza a buen ritmo, ya tenemos los equipos en la planta y una previsión de entrada en funcionamiento también para final de año. Antes de concluir esta presentación y después de exponer los importantes datos financieros del semestre, me gustaría hacer un repaso a las acciones ESG llevadas a cabo.
Review the different ESG actions that we have carried out in the last 6 months.
Además, dos hitos relevantes han marcado.
And I would like to stress 2 relevant milestones we have reached in the last few years. We have adhered the United Nations Global Compact, the world's largest corporate sustainability initiative, with over 19,000 entities in 165 countries that are members of the compact, sharing principles and values that govern our day-to-day decision-making. Ecoener's annual accounts include for the first time our first sustainability report, which includes information on our performance in the area of social responsibility, governance, and the environment, and is helping us to show society a real commitment in this area. The sustainability report has been drawn up in accordance with ESG criteria, and it has been audited and verified by the prestigious international certifier CERT. As part of our environmental commitment, during the first half of 2022, we are pioneering the installation of green screens at our facilities in the Canary Islands. We have erected almost 2,000, I repeat, 2,000 meters of vegetation barrier to favor the landscape integration of our assets.
Somos la única empresa que está realizando esto en las Islas Canarias.
We are the only company with presence in the Canary Islands. We have carried out the planting with autochthonous species and recycled water from a wastewater treatment plant in the surrounding area. And we have avoided the emission of more than 32,000 tons of CO2 into the atmosphere. And we have also avoided almost 15,000 tons of fossil fuels. In the area of social responsibility, we have continued to contribute to a commitment in those places where we operate. In the Dominican Republic, we are collaborating with the social agents of the local populations in various actions of an educational and mobility nature, where we are building our assets.
En Honduras, mantenemos
In
nuestro apoyo para
Honduras, we
desarrollo
continue our support to contribute to the development of 3 communities located near one of our photovoltaic plants.
En Canarias hemos
In the Canary Islands, we have supported the women's first division football team, Guinea-Lux Juan Grande,
y tenemos un acuerdo
and we have a social cooperation agreement with the children's categories in the Castillo football team. As part of our commitment to cultural heritage, we have collaborated in the maintenance of the roof of the 12th century church, Santa Maria do Sixto, in the municipality of Orol, where we have been active for more than 20 years. And in the field of dissemination and promotion of renewable energies, we are currently opening our facilities to educational centers and schools in the communities where we are located, so that we can learn about our company and the potential of this sector. These are just a few examples that show that Ecoener has a firm environmental and social commitment. We conclude this presentation of results for the first 6 months of 2022. And as usual, I remain at your entire disposal. Thank you very much for your attention.
Please, Q&A is already open. Anyone can pose the questions. This is the moment. Thank you.
Hola. ¿Se me escucha?
Perfectamente.
¿Qué tal? Buenas tardes, muchas gracias por la presentación. Soy Miguel de...
Hello, I'm Miguel de Oros. I don't know if I should ask the question in English because I arrived a little bit late, or in Spanish. You can answer as you wish, either language. Okay, fine then. Many thanks then. I do have some little questions here. In Paita, is that going to have COD from 2022 already, or is it unlikely? When are you expecting it to all start working? That would be impossible. It will come online in 2023. In the first half year? Possibly in the first 6 months? But I don't want to tie myself down unnecessarily. It's possible, very likely it will be in the first 6 months. In fact, the purchases have already made in order to have the trackers and the panels there and ready to go, but I don't want to, well, in the Dominican Republic, there's been a problem with the assassination of the Minister of the Environment. And there were resignations in the Electricity Supervisory Board, and so we'll have to wait a bit before we get all the licenses. We're expected to get them very soon, but we have to be careful. Otherwise, we would have finished the construction of the project for this year. But we think that in 3 or 4 weeks, just over a month, we'll have everything there and ready on our desks to get ready and get going. But at the moment, I can't be any more specific. I can't give you a specific date. But the first half year would seem to be reasonable. But it could possibly get pushed forward into August. Okay, understood. And then another 2 questions. First of all, could you give us an idea of the average pool price here in Spain? And then what kind of PPAs you're expecting to sign off for? I mean, from 2021, you've had very high prices, well, compared to 2021. So I'd imagine that you probably prefer to use pool pricing, wouldn't you? Well, we don't have everything in pool pricing. We've only got part of our business in pool pricing. A big amount of Ecoener's assets are giving in a guaranteed revenue, guaranteed by the government of Spain, that is. And that has a positive aspect with respect to the revenues and the pool, but there's a negative aspects when you look at your return on investment. The average price for the revenues would be about 185 euros. But that's for the Spanish part of the business. Okay, that's perfect. Thank you very much, Luis. I'm delighted. Anything you wish.
Sí, buenos días. ¿Me oís?
Sí, buenos días, Ángel.
Hola, soy Ángel.
Good morning, I'm Ángel. I've got a question about next year. Have you hedged your prices? Looking at the kind of future prices we've been seeing, which are pretty high, or are you trusting that prices will continue to go up, the spot prices will continue to go up?
No respondí esto a Miguel. Te pido perdón, Miguel.
Miguel?
Os lo voy a contestar a los dos.
Maybe Miguel can. Well, no, I'll answer that. No, we're not. We're not doing any PPAs for Spain for next year. So we're going to take on that market risk.
Bueno, que de momento es favorable.
And for the moment, that's favorable for us. And as next year rolls out, we might make decisions maybe to sign off on certain prices if the winds are favorable. But for the moment, we don't want to do that.
¿Cuál es la perspectiva futura?
What's the outlook for the future?
Está totalmente condicionada y en este es un momento, pues,
all depend, well,
estamos condicionados por las decisiones que se puedan tomar
on the
mañana.
decisions that might be taken tomorrow by the European Union. So right now, we're not expecting things to look unfavorable for Ecoener.
Nuestra perspectiva es
Our outlook is that in the long term,
hay que dejar de hablar de 35 euros.
We're talking about 35 euros in the past, but now we'll have to start talking about 40, 45 euros with inflation and the supply issues, the outlook. And I think this is reflected in all the studies you can see from the different pricing agencies. Energy in the long term is going to really hit a wall. Which, I mean, but that would be good for Ecoener. I don't know what might happen next year. Next year, we might hit that peak established by the European Union, or prices might start to go down, not sharply, but to go down gradually, which would mean that next year we've got a year of uncertainty, but definitely above what we were expecting when we drew up our forecast. So we're not at all worried about things. And then in the long term, what we want is for power prices to be above what we thought before we started doing all the plans that we had, which is good for us too. And then I had two questions about your different projects that you're rolling out next year. Do you have any figure for the megawatts that you're expecting to have in installed capacity at the end of this year? And with inflation and with the stronger dollar, have you seen an increase in capex per megawatt in the projects over and above what you might have expected? Thank you very much, and congratulations on your results. There are two questions then. Let's start with capex. Obviously, that's increased, not just because of costs, but also with the stronger euro. But buying equipment costs more because you can buy less with the euro, which has gone down against the dollar. In Europe, that doesn't matter so much. Power prices are much higher. And so you could offset one thing with another. But in other geographies where we're operating, it does mean that we undermine the returns we get on the business, because apart from that, we've seen increase in funding costs and slight increase, which we had in capex for our installations. We went from 21 to 607,000 per megawatt as a standard in PV power. Evidently, that ratifies the idea that you can't get involved in projects where you've got very tight returns, but we always have good, comfortable margins with good returns, which mean that we can manage to absorb these impacts. Obviously, they have a slight impact, but we can manage to absorb them within the pricing patterns that we have. I don't know, Angel, have I answered everything? Otherwise, you can get back to me. Yeah, you were talking about 400, yes, 400 and something for this year, as your target? Well, yes, 360 megawatts this year is what we'll get, with 67 in construction very shortly. And there'll be more incorporations into our construction portfolio before the end of the year. Our outlook for next year is to get about 650 megawatts in operation. Okay then. So now we've got a question from Charles Revy. Go ahead, Charles.
Your turn for the question.
Hi, good morning, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for the question. Could you just comment, and I know we've spoken a bit about this before, but could you comment on how much of your current portfolio is exposed to market prices, and how will this mix change by year end? Thank you.
Pues fuera de España.
Well, outside Spain, all of our operations have PPAs, so we've got fixed prices, which means that we don't have any changes or variation, because all the operations outside Spain have a PPA, which means with fixed prices, there's no change. And that's quite favorable for us, because, for example, in Colombia, we include inflation in that PPA, so that is very beneficial for us. And then in Spain, our outlook is that we have to see what the European Union says tomorrow, but we think that price will be at about 150, 160, maybe 170 euros a megawatt from now to the end of the year.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Luis, tenemos ahora unas preguntas de Jorge Alonso de Sociedad General.
Now we have questions from Jorge Alonso.
Que no ha podido conectarse por el audio, algún problema, entonces te paso
He's
a
having problems
Alejandro.
with his audio. I'm sorry, Chano.
Ah, estás aquí, ahora ya puedes.
In the end, I
Sí, te
could.
escuchamos. Venga,
Can you
pues
hear
da
me?
tú
Yes, we
directamente.
can. Yes. Sorry about that. I wanted to ask you if you could give me a bit of color with a breakdown, maybe, of your capacity for 23, looking at different geographies and different technologies, so we can have an idea about what kind of growth you're going to be having. And then I'd also like to ask you about Spain. Are you expecting your regulated assets to cease to get remuneration on the investment because of the high prices? And if that's the case, in 2023, would that mean that your regulated assets would be impacted, or nearly all of them? Because that would mean they wouldn't get any return on investment, which would mean they'd be free to capture the spot price, or maybe you get a PPA or something. But anyway, you'd be freed up to be able to work with whatever commercial strategy you wish. I also wanted to ask you about funding costs for new projects. Are you seeing an increase in the costs? What kind of level should we expect there? And then finally, can you give us your best estimate on net debt for the end of the year and the tax rate for the end of the year?
Caramba, Jorge.
Jorge.
Esto es todo un examen, más que una pregunta.
This is like an examination more than just a Q&A. Sorry about that, but we do like to grab our opportunities while they last.
Bien.
Okay, then. Right, future growth. Future growth. 23 in the Dominican Republic, Colombia, and in Spain. That's where we're focusing. Spain starting to build 50 megawatts for wind in Galicia, and a number we don't have yet for wind and PV in the Canary Islands. We're calculating then that approximately it'll be about 120 megawatts then in Spain, which will start up sometime during 2023. In the Dominican Republic, it'll be 150 megawatts in the 1, 2, and 3 projects in Baikam, which I talked about. In a few weeks, as I said, we'll be starting the engineering works, the building works. And in Paita 2, with the substation, we have to finalize the details, but we will do so very shortly. And in 3, there's a further delay, so we think the building will start in the middle of next year. And then in Colombia, we've got approximately 80 megawatts in PV. Well, 72 actually in PV, to be more exact, which we will be building over all of next year. And then we'll start building, although we don't have the start date yet, for 100 megawatts of hydropower in Ecuador. But the specific projects are mainly, right now, in Spain, the Dominican Republic, and Colombia. They're the ones that we have all the details finalized on. And then the regulated assets. Well, yes, regulated assets. Which is quite a mystery, really. We have given up on the return on investment in 2 assets because we calculated at a price, a fair price, a very fair price for power. The return on investment meant that we couldn't get a profit in from that, so we waived that. But there are other assets we have which still have a lot of years of this remuneration, and so for 3 years we don't have to worry about those at all. So in nearly all the assets, we're not going to get the remuneration on our investment because for 3 years, because the pool price, we think, is going to eat it up. And the pool prices will indeed be higher than what was calculated to make it possible to get a return on investment. And after the end of next year, so with this 3 years, looking ahead 3 years, we'll have to find out then what the future looks like. But right now, well, we've got 15 years of remuneration on the investment in these assets. So there's going to be a lot of remuneration there. The prices won't be sustained over time. The funding costs right now are 3.7% fixed prices for the company. Obviously, they're going to be funding the projects in Colombia and the Dominican Republic, and these will be complicated and expensive to fund. The negotiations are starting now. Things have changed quite radically, and we'll be at about 7.58% in the Dominican Republic, 3.5 points more than we were planning for, what we'd expected. And then in Colombia, there it's more serious. We'll be at about 10.5%, which is 3.5 points higher than what we'd originally calculated. There's still a lot of appetite for funding, for finance, but obviously the finance is more expensive now. The finance will be set at a variable rate. So we hope that when things normalize, we should get some substantial improvements as the cost of funding goes down. Our best estimate for the tax rate? Well, Ecoener is in Canary Islands and has a lot of reserves to offset against future revenues. So we've got a lot of deferred tax assets that we can use. So we feel pretty comfortable, because definitely we're not going to see our cash flow being drained off. So that's very good for us. The volume of net debt from now to the end of the year, the beginning of next year, an increase in the debt will be high because we want to fund the projects that we're building, and we're building a lot of projects right now. And next year, we'll also have a lot of projects which we will need to fund, which means that the debt in the company will go up substantively. The exact figure? Well, I think from now to the end of the year, we'll see an increase of about 100 million euros. And next year, there'll be an increase of 150 million euros, more or less. Well, actually, that would probably at the least. It depends on all the things we've mentioned. With trying to do as many projects as we can, it could be 150 to even 200 million euros, actually. I don't know if I've answered all your questions, Jorge, have I? Yes, thank you very much.
Bueno, parece que no tenemos más preguntas.
It would seem we don't have any more
It seems we
questions.
have no further questions.
Yo animo a todos, por favor, esto que le he dicho a Jorge, no.
I'd like to encourage everyone. I mean, Jorge has already said,
We are delighted
we're always
to
delighted
answer
to answer your
as many
questions.
questions as you may have. I
And this
believe
year,
these
our
are
results have
quite
frankly been
excellent
very good.
results.
So I think it's a good time to start asking about the future.
Since I have the opportunity, taking into consideration that the cash being obtained by, given the very high prices that we are reporting in Spain, much higher than those initially reported during the IPO process.
La pregunta viene por, ¿eso podría hacer que se acelerara algo el plan de
Would this
crecimiento?
mean accelerating the business plan, or perhaps part of the business plan will be declining because of the greatest capital expenditure needs and because of the funding needs, and we would be comfortable in these 200 megawatts or the initial target that we had set up, because it's perhaps not a matter of rushing it, although perhaps you expect the peaking prices situation to last for about 2 or 3 years or even longer in Spain. Are you comfortable with this situation because you have greater financial muscle trying to generate a little bit more in terms of megawatts, or these initial 200 megawatts objective is still feasible?
I think that's a great question, which I'm not really going to answer. How come? Well, our intention is obviously next year to really make a great leap forward. Well, we've already done it this year, but next year we want to give another great leap forward. We think that with all the drive we're getting from the prices, we actually have the capacity to do so, but I don't want to generate expectations because I never like to let people down. Our intention is to do that. We'll have to see if we're able to do it or not. You talk about the capacity of the company. Well, we've got high capacity in the company. Financial resources we've got. The problems lie in all the paperwork that has to be done with the government administrations. But we're definitely going to go all out to get that volume of megawatts and to really push it up.
Perfecto. Y con respecto al mercado
Thank you very much
colombiano,
indeed. And with regards to the Colombian market, please,
para firmar
what
PPA,
about the difficulties that you had in order to sign different agreements, or perhaps to
acelerar el proyecto de la
accelerate
hidráulica?
the
¿Cómo está esa situación?
hydraulic energy project? What is the current
In
situation?
Colombia, you know that the government's changed. There's been a substantial increase in funding costs. The currency has depreciated. And nonetheless, by the end of next year, we'll have 100 megawatts in operation in Colombia. But we don't want, well, we've had good management capacity in order to get PPAs, good PPAs from very solvent companies, which have been signed. I can't give you the names, but we've signed these PPAs and we're going through the process of signing more now. In hydro, we aren't yet ready to take that step. We'll have to see what the social peace looks like in the country, whether it's peaceful, and how this government settles down, if it settles down. And does it support us? Doesn't it support us? We'll have to see. But once things are clearer, then we can start moving towards that.
Sí, buenas de nuevo, Luis. Soy Miguel.
Hola, Miguel.
Hello again, Luis Miguel speaking. Hello again.
Antes comentabas lo de los 2 parques eólicos en Galicia. ¿Cómo va el tema de
talked about the two different
y
wind
luego se
farms
podía
in Galicia. Can you
ahí también
discuss what is the current situation with permits, and have you experienced any bottlenecks in the Canary Islands?
There are always bottlenecks everywhere, quite honestly. But we're hoping to get the permits for Galicia before the end of the year. And in the Canary Islands, really, we're doing fine. But, well, it is quite complex, of course. And specifically in Galicia, we're expecting to get it all for the end of the year. In Canary Islands, we've got part of it already permitted. We want to have more volume. Otherwise, the construction costs really shoot up. So once we've got the volume we consider to be sufficient, about 60, 70 megawatts, then we can start the works. And we're expecting that will be about in April or May next year.
Muchas gracias.
Thank you very much indeed.
Perdón, yo quería hacer otra pregunta.
Allow me to ask
respecto
another question, please, with regards to
de cara a
the
2023, viendo
guidance ahead of
retrasos
2023 and the given delays in the Dominican Republic projects.
250
In order to reach the 650 megawatts objective,
haciendo
I
durante este
suppose
2023
in
cerca de 300
2023,
megavatios. Entonces, no sé si vosotros
this
hablabais de
means around
capacidad
300
en el entorno
megawatts, and you have
500,
mentioned that you have a
¿hay algún
capacity of
tipo de
around 200 megawatts.
alcanzar esa cifra de
Is
instalación
this going to be a hindrance, or is this going
de
to
los de República Dominicana?
prevent you from reaching the project's intention in the Dominican Republic? Can this really become another bottleneck internally? Thank you very much indeed.
No, the projects in the Dominican Republic are just awaiting their permits. We've gone a long way with that. It's one single project because the two come together for 50 megawatts, the two different plants we have there. And everything's ready. So Paitona 1 and 2 are considered to be on the margin of the projects we've already got. We've already got a team working there in the Dominican Republic, and we'll finish the Paitona 1 and 2 for next year. The only thing that we're doing now is adding another to that 120 that we already got in the Dominican Republic. So we're just adding. So we feel quite comfortable about the company's capacity. It's also true that we're starting in the Canaries. There are different size projects there. If you look at the number of projects under construction, some of them are bigger and some are smaller, but they all help our capacity to get boosted.
Well understood. Thank you very much indeed.
¿Algo más?
¿Se puede dos
Anything
preguntas?
else?
Puede todo lo que se quiera.
Pues nada, muchas gracias. Miguel Medina Armanex.
I would
Sobre
like
los
to
costes
ask two
que ha
brief
comentado para
questions
República
regarding
Dominicana y
funding
para
cost
Colombia,
for the
solamente aclarar
Dominican Republic and
costes
Colombia.
en dólares
Would you
o en
please
moneda
kindly
local.
ratify
Y
if this is
después,
expressed in
la
US dollars or
segunda,
local currency?
lo que se ha
And my
comentado
second question, in line with
coste del
what you have mentioned, the greater
en las operaciones
capital expenditure because of the
financieros, saber si también el hecho
funding
de que los
cost in US dollars.
pues al
The
final el
PPAs
impacto
are subject to US dollar, and therefore the impact on the internal rate of return in euros is going to be substantial, don't you think? Thank you.
In the Dominican Republic, everything's in dollars. And that means
no hay ningún
that
efecto.
there is no impact for us. In Colombia, that's not the case. It's in local currency. Yes, the funding and the revenues too. The funding is always kept in the same currency as the revenues, otherwise you do get nasty surprises. And the currency has weakened by about 10% with the new government coming in. So we do hope that as things normalize, however, the currency will recover.
The PPA in Colombia is in local currency, but it's also inflation linked, isn't it? Okay, thank you. Oh, fantastic. Yeah, thank you.
Yes, the only place where it's indexed to inflation, which is very beneficial for us. Understood. Thank you.
Thank you. Well understood.
Bueno, pues si os parece, damos por cerrado la...
Well, in that case, let's wrap up. That's the presentation for you. I'd like to thank you for your presence and thank you for your questions.